So as I said, we're finishing off our series on the Beatitudes today, and we're looking at the last one. What I want to do first, though, is just compare it with the one before, because if you remember, the previous Beatitude was also about persecution. So here's Matthew 5, verse 10, as we read it back in November, compared with verses 11 and 12. Which is what we're looking at today. And I wonder, as you compare them side by side, whether you notice anything in particular. First of all, you could say that verses 11 and 12 are a kind of an elaboration on verse 10. So that you've got the first half of verse 10, which we find elaborated and expanded upon in verse 11. And the second half of verse 10 is parallel with verse 12, and again elaborated somewhat. But I also notice here that it personifies righteousness and it personifies persecution. Of course, the character of righteousness is the Lord. It's not us, it's the Lord. And then there are these people, they, who are said to persecute. So looking at verse 11, just wanted to share with you the interlinear translation in the English. So it just expands on it a little. So the words we're familiar with at the top. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all kind of evil against you falsely for my sake. In the interlinear it's rendered this way. Blessed are you when they shall insult you and shall persecute and shall say all kinds of evil against you, lying on account of me. Just a slightly different translation. But what I want to particularly do is concentrate on verse 12, because I find verse 12 really quite interesting. So I'm going to think about, first of all, the word rejoice. Because here's the Greek word rejoice, and it can be translated rejoice, be glad, be joyful. But as you read the concordance further through the lexicon, it says things like this, that rejoice conveys a sense of inner joy and delight, often in response to God's grace and goodness. And then if we continue, this other word, which is translated be exceedingly glad, means to rejoice greatly, exult, be exceedingly glad. But again, what the lexicon says as it explores this word further, it says it conveys a sense of exuberant joy and gladness, often expressed physically or emotionally. Not merely an emotional response, but a profound spiritual state of being. And I don't think that sense is captured in the English translation. So you have this inner state of being. There is an inner joy at the presence of the Lord, and there is an outward manifestation of it. And this is what we talk about when we speak about the pairing of what is good and what is true. Truth is the expression of an inner state of being. The other thing that I learnt, and I have to admit I'm not a great Hebrew or Greek scholar, but the other thing that I learned from reading the lexicon is the tense in which this is written, the present active imperative. And what it is, the present active imperative are commands that are expected to be followed not once, but as an ongoing process. And I wonder if you think of this beatitude as a command. It doesn't happen just once in your life. It is an ongoing command. This is the state we are urged to shine forth, to show in our lives. Another question worth asking is, when we talk about persecution, we have this very clear sense of what we think persecution is. It's other people who are attacking us for our faith, yes? But is persecution, is this beatitude only relevant if people are attacking us for our faith? Is it only relevant in a certain set of external circumstances? Or should we expect as Christians to be attacked for our faith? Or should we even go out looking for trouble? You see, I know too many Christians who are all too willing to wear their sense of injustice on their sleeves as though it is the very badge of their Christianity. But as I read this beatitude, I think that's the very opposite of what is being asked of us. You know, Jesus says later on in the Sermon on the Mount, "But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face." We're not supposed to go around with a miserable countenance as though, you know, the weight of the world is on our shoulders. We're supposed to go around with a sense of joy. The commentator John Stott wrote this: "How did Jesus expect his disciples to react under persecution? Rejoice and be glad. We are not to retaliate like an unbeliever, nor sulk like a child, nor lick our wounds in self-pity like a dog, nor just grin and bear it like a stoic, still less pretend that we enjoy it like a masochist. What then? We are to rejoice as a Christian should, and even leap for joy." What I want to say about this is there's always, two ways of reading the Bible. There's an external way, looking at the external facts of the story, and there's an internal way. And which is the essential way to read the Bible? Well, according to the teachings of the church, it's the inner way. The inner way is essential. I've had a number of arguments online recently about the return of Jesus Christ. The essence of the return of Jesus Christ is always going to be that he reigns in the world. Yes, would you agree with that? That Jesus reigns in the world. The thing is, it doesn't require a physical coming for that to happen. What it requires is that Jesus reigns within our lives, each one of us. That is the essence of Jesus reigning in the world. When every single person on this planet can say, "Jesus reigns in my life," then Jesus will rule the world. And that inner state of being will bring about a transformation out there. That's the essence of what is intended. It is the inner state of being which is so important, and that will lead to a manifestation. And it finishes off with this statement: "Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." And this represents a rejection of the word. And I think if there's anything that's a kind of a litmus test of our Christianity, it's this: that there is a rejection of the word that we experience. It may well be other people out in the world rejecting us for what we say we believe, but there's also an inner reality to it, which is there are aspects of our lives which reject the teaching of the Lord. There are aspects of our lives that reject what the word reveals to us. We don't like it. And it's those evils and falsities in our own life that I think are really important for us to bear in mind. I want to finish off by just going back to the reading that I read this morning from Exodus chapter 1. And you might think, well, what's the connection? Here is Swedenborg's summary statement about what this chapter, Exodus chapter 1, means. He says, "This first chapter deals in the internal sense with the state of the church which has been established, a state in which good plays the leading part and is made fruitful through the multiplication of truths of faith. And that's the multiplication of the Israelites. They're abundant, they're growing. And then it talks about Pharaoh's opposition. Then the molestation of those truths by falsities and evils in the natural is dealt with. And the fact that through that molestation, good was made even more fruitful by means of truths. That's an interesting thing to say. By virtue of the molestation of evils and falsities against goods and truths are made even more abundant. The subject through to the end of the chapter is that molestation and the stages it passes through as it increases, as well as the resulting installation and consolidation of truth from good. So the chapter pictures the way that divine truths from the Word are rejected, but then that makes those truths stand out even more, and they become so much more abundant and useful to us. I talked last month about the wisdom of experience, that we're made stronger in adversity. And what we have here is this idea that these goods and truths within our lives are strengthened by the opposition they face. And we can know that we're growing spiritually when we face that temptation rather than running away from it, contrary to the way it feels sometimes. So while none of us wish trials and temptations and difficult experiences, while we long to escape them, and we certainly wouldn't go back into those states, when we have opportunity and we look back on our lives, we can see the ways that we have benefited from them. They have that saying, I'm sure you've heard, no pain, no gain. It's true physically, but it's also true spiritually as well. I've often said that my difficult classes have been the ones that have made me the better teacher. Not that I would go back into those difficult classes at all, if I could avoid it. But I have to admit, afterwards, they are the ones that have challenged my teaching ability and made me really dig deep to find something that's going to stimulate and help them to learn. And I'm sure you, as you sit and you think and you look back at your life to this point, and you look at your own state now, often we think how far we have to go. We look at our own evils and we think, oh gee, am I really going to make it into heaven? But then look back at where you were 20 years ago and you realise, well, I have come a long way because of the experiences that I've passed through. And the thing is, we don't need external opposition for any of that growth to take place. It's all what goes on in here. This is what's being spoken of. So this beatitude, the persecution, and the chapter 1 of Exodus speak about our inner state, the inner challenges we face. And we can do the work of repentance here and now without needing other people to be attacking us for our faith. We have all the challenge that we need in here and in here.